Hi, it's Jan Beta, and this is the start of what is probably going to become a long series of videos about restoring this Amiga 3000T, or Tower. Super rare Amiga. I'm looking forward to looking inside and figuring it out and hopefully bringing it back to its original beauty. I'm not quite sure, but we're going to explore this machine together, I guess. So let's get started with this. So this is a very rare Amiga 3000 Tower, and it's so tall that I have to do some panning of the camera here, or tilting. Yeah, you can see Amiga 3000T, and we're going to talk about the history of this machine briefly now. You've probably heard of the Amiga 3000 or 3000D, the desktop version of this machine that Commodore released in 1990. And they also released a higher-end version aimed at the professional market, kind of. That is this beast here. This was released shortly after the standard Amiga 3000, which is a rare computer because it was only produced between 1990 and 1992, I believe. And this one was released shortly after the original version and had slightly better specs. It came with a 68030 processor that was clocked at 25 MHz. The original Amiga 3000 was also available in 16 MHz, I believe. And this was later also available as the 3000T040, which had the 3640 expansion card in it already that has a 68040 processor on it. These were super expensive, and I think there are not too many of these that were ever made, let alone survived until this point in time. Yeah, very, very rare Amiga, high-end Amiga. The Amiga 3000 always was my dream Amiga, and I never even managed to find one that I could afford of the normal Amiga 3000s. And a couple of months back, I got an email from Adrian, who you actually probably know from YouTube, one of the most active and dedicated retro repair YouTubers around, and also a super friendly person. And we've been in touch over the years a couple of times, and yeah, he's actually a real staple of the community. This machine was donated by a very generous person in Austria that doesn't want to be named, and of course I'm going to respect that. And I'm also going to blur any personal information that might be on potential hard disks that are in here. The person reached out to Adrian and wanted to donate this thing, and Adrian forwarded it kind of to me, and I got in touch with the person who donated this, and we had some very friendly email conversation, and it ended up in my hands because, of course, Austria is a bit closer to Germany, where I am, than it is to the United States of America, where Adrian is. So that made sense from a shipping point of view. Unfortunately, this machine weighs around, I think, 20 kilograms or so, and I got some peripherals with it, like the keyboard and the mouse, which we are going to take a look at in later videos in this series, I think. Unfortunately, there was some shipping damage because this thing is so heavy, and it didn't make it completely unharmed, but it's relatively minor damage, thankfully. So we're going to be able to fix most of it, hopefully. So a huge thanks to both the person who donated this, who shall remain unnamed, as per request. I also want to make clear that I didn't take advantage in any way of the person who donated this, or at least I tried not to. I made clear that this is a super expensive machine these days, super rare, and I would love to have it, but it's probably worth several thousand euros at this point if you sell it on eBay. So I made that clear to the person who donated it. And the person still wanted to donate it, which is, yeah, I don't know what to say. This is one of the best and most valuable donations I ever got on the channel. So thank you very, very much for this. I hope I can do this thing justice in the cause of this restoration series. And also huge shout out to Adrian Black, who forwarded this to me. Without you, this wouldn't have ended up in my hands, I guess. With that out of the way, we are going to open this up and have a first look inside. And there's probably going to be some battery damage because these things, as many of the Amigas, have a Varta battery on the board to buffer the real-time clock. And that might be a bit destructive. The previous owner of this told me that it works kind of. It displays a yellow screen, which is a fault indicated by the Kickstart ROM. Yeah, probably there's going to be some trace damage because of the battery leakage, I would guess, but we're going to take a look. So as I said, there's some slight shipping damage. One point of damage is the little eject button from the floppy disk drive broke off. This has more expansion possibilities than the desktop variant of the 3000. It has 3 expansion slots here for drives and 2 3.5-inch expansion slots for disk drives. It has the little grill look of the Amiga 3000, continued on the bottom here, but this case is basically a Commodore PC60 case that has a modified front and back. It also comes with feet, which are broken off on one side, unfortunately, on this particular one. So on this side, both feet snapped off during shipping, I believe, but I only found one of the feet in the box it was shipped in. So I guess the other one was already broken off before this was shipped, which is of course a bit unfortunate, but not a very major thing. These are just plastic things with some metal feet under them. And you can get 3D printed replacement, something I'm of course looking into. Like many professional use PCs of the era, this has a key to start it actually, or to lock it from unauthorized use. So yeah, this front panel I think is probably the same as on the Commodore PC60 that they sold at the time. Proper chunky power switch and also a key, which I also have, but we're going to look into that later. On the back side of the machine we have the power supply section with a fan, of course. This is the European 240 volts model. It has an outlet for a monitor that is switched on simultaneously with the machine, which is pretty handy. Same keyboard connector as the Amiga 3000D, the desktop version, or the Amiga 2000, so we can use an Amiga 2000 keyboard with this. We can also use an adapter for PC keyboards and use an Amiga 4000 keyboard with this. We have 2 mouse ports, which is pretty interesting. I think this is probably the only Amiga with 2 mouse ports, which are the normal Amiga joystick and mouse ports. These are just labeled mouse 1 and mouse 2 on this machine. We have the normal serial port, a floppy disk drive port. We have a SCSI port because the Amiga 3000 has SCSI on board, already built in, no expansions needed for that. We have a parallel port, that's also the standard one. And interestingly, we have this assortment of video outputs. We have a 15 kilohertz video output. This is the regular RGB output that the Amigas have. And then we have a 31 kilohertz video output, which is this VGA plug here. So this can display VGA output right out of the box. This has the scan doubler already on board. That's an Amber chip-based flicker fixer, as they were called in the Amiga world. And you can disable that with this little switch here. And then it has audio outputs, stereo, RCA connectors, just like on any other Amiga, which is pretty nice. As far as expansion cards are concerned, I see quite a few in here actually. 3 expansion cards. Something with DB9 and DB25, I think, connectors. Another thing with a PS2 looking connector, mini DIN, and a 23-pin connector, I guess, and a VGA connector. So this also says video, so this is probably a video card of some description. Don't know what the other ones are, but we are going to look at that shortly. And funnily enough, this has the Commodore sticker in the back here, model A3000T. 220 to 240 volts AC, 2.5 amps, 50 hertz. That's normal for the region. And then it says serial number, and it's just left blank. So probably they made so few of these that some of them don't even have a serial number on them. This sticker looks absolutely factory, so yeah. I guess they didn't print serial numbers on these because they were super expensive back in the day and only very few were sold. I didn't find numbers online, but I guess a few thousand were made of these at the most. So very high-end Amiga, no serial number. Caution! Disconnect from power supply before servicing. Vor Öffnen des Geräts den Netzstecker ziehen. That's the German equivalent. Some of the legal stuff, and interestingly made in West Germany. So made in the Braunschweig Commodore factory, I guess. Let's take a look inside, I guess. In order to get inside, we're going to use a tool that iFixit, who are sponsoring this video, provided to me. This is their Narwhal screwdriver. So this is the iFixit Narwhal 6-in-1 driver, and it has Phillips heads 1 and 2, 5.5mm and 7mm slotted head, and hex 1/4 inch and 5/16 inch. It has a swivel grip cap which turns, but you can push it in and it stays in place if you have some stronger screws that you have to remove. Full aluminum body, or aluminium if you like. This has a rubberized grip and it's really a good size in your hand, even for the more stubborn screws. This has a bit here that you can turn around and insert. Really nice fit. You can pull this whole thing out and you have another bit in the other end that you can twist and insert whichever way you want. And you have this thing that you can insert again. And then you have your hex heads here if you remove the bits. So that's a really versatile, super solid feeling tool. I really like it. And you can get one too. The link is in the video description. And I'm going to use this for this Amiga. So thanks iFixit for sending me this and for sponsoring this video. So, and I apologize in advance for any weird camera angles that you're going to see during these videos, because this thing is huge. I am going to start with turning this around. As I said, it weighs around 20 kilograms. We are going to have to remove the front cover here. I'm going to use a little spudger tool for that to carefully... This is just clipped in. But yeah, we don't want to break any of the clips, I guess. So I'm going to try to be cautious. Which is kind of, yeah, I was really careful here, but still it made some sounds. Didn't break any of the clips off. 2 clips here. This is the inside of the whole thing. This is just a plastic part with some screws here. It was modded at some point. There's like a little cutout for an LED or something here. I think that's an LED holder. And we have a hard disk in this position in one of the 3.5-inch slots. We have nothing here. We have some of the screws that hold the side panels on under here. And as you can see, this is where the seal was, the warranty seal. We have another fan here, it seems. So 1 fan in the front here and 1 fan in the back on the power supply. So the warranty seal is already broken, so we don't have a lot to lose. But there's a warranty seal on top here. We have a secondary warranty seal here that is still intact, interestingly. So nobody took the top part of the casing off here. I am probably going to have to break this during this restoration, but we're going to see. Also, there's still a disc in here. Techno cop, maybe game. Yeah, as I said, the little button here fell off during shipping, but we're going to be able to fix that, no worries. So we're going to remove the screws from this side panel, I guess. So we can look at the insides. And I'm using the Narwhal So, and this is where our warranty seal is originally. So on the back side we should have more screws. Sorry about the sound. Yeah, 2 more. And interestingly, these are painted in the case color. Another nice touch. I think the same with the A3000D. So now we should be able to take the side cover off here. This should probably just lift out in some way. I really don't want to destroy this. Okay, there we are. Whew, and there's a lot in there. This is super heavy. This is like 1 kilogram alone, only the side panel. Okay, let's take a look at this. We have a lot of cables, of course. There's our Varta, and that is, of course, yeah, very much in the middle of everything. These are our kickstart ROMs, I believe. There's our RAM, and yeah, the Varta we're going to have to remove. I can't see any super significant battery damage, thankfully. We have our disk drive, we have the hard disk that we've seen from the front. We have another hard disk on the side here. And yeah, the whole thing is full of motherboard. Basically, this is the largest mainboard that Commodore ever made, I believe. And we have some interesting stuff in the bottom there as well. That looks like a PC card. There's an Intel chip on there and another Varta. Oh no. So this looks to me to be a PC card. One of the bridge boards. There's cables coming from that for a PC disk drive, I think. And for the PC hard disk, which I guess is this one here. No, that's connected to a hard disk controller card. Ah, okay. So one of the smaller cards here, these are the Amiga specific Zorro slots on this side, and these are the ISA slots for the PC side. So this is a PC emulator card, not really an emulator, it's really a PC on a card. Lots of RAM here, and it's got its own processor and things like that. And unfortunately, it also has its own Varta over here, so we're going to have to do some cleanup on that. And I can already see that there's some corrosion on this, which I believe is a hard disk controller card, a PC hard disk controller card that's in the ISA slot and doesn't make contact with the Zorro slot, which is the Amiga side. So yeah, this uses this for the hard disk, it seems. And there's another card under there that I can't really see from this angle. Yeah, we're going to have to take these cards out to take a closer look. And also, of course, we need to remove the Vartas and repair the battery damage. Hopefully it's not that severe, because this card, I think, is a 386 PC card bridge board, which is pretty valuable in itself and also a very nice upgrade for any Amiga. So yeah, we are going to have to take this thing completely apart. We are going to have to dismantle most of this to get to the main board and remove that and work on it, because there's the Varta there, and we have to take a look at least at what we can do to remove that and remove the damage it caused probably over the years. I am going to take pictures of the whole thing and how it was wired up, and hopefully restore it to its original wiring. That's at least the initial plan. And then there's, of course, a gazillion ways of upgrading this, because it is a big box Amiga, and there's many options to upgrade these days. There were back in the day as well, but these days, yeah, there are even more options to upgrade these. It is already heavily upgraded. As far as I can see, all the RAM slots are populated. So it should have the maximum amount of RAM, whatever that was back in the day. I think it shipped with 4 megabytes of fast RAM and 1 megabyte of chip RAM, if I'm not mistaken. But you could upgrade it to something ridiculous for the time, like 16 megabytes, I think. So this seems to be upgraded fully. Very high-spec machine, but it doesn't seem to have a processor card in there, so it's a 68030 running at 25 megahertz. As far as I know, so far. Okay, this is going to be quite a bit of effort, but very much worth saving this thing. I took photos of every corner of this, and yeah, let's dismantle it. I think I'm going to start with the expansion cards. So yeah, this has two floppy disk connectors on here, this PC card. They are taped together, so that's pretty handy, I guess. This uses, I think, the Amiga disk drive as a PC disk drive as well, so it's just connected through if the card isn't active. Yeah, this is another hard disk light connector. This is the LED for the PC hard disk. This is connected to the PC hard disk interface card here. So this was what was on that front panel. Definitely DIY. That's like a telephone wire. I love working on these old things and figuring out what the previous owners did to this. And this, as far as I know, this is unchanged from when it was last used in the 90s probably, or maybe even in the early 2000s. We don't know. Yeah, I'm just removing these cards. It should be a matter of removing these screws and carefully getting the cards out. Careful wiggling. Maybe I'm going to remove the other cards first. That's a smaller card, should come out easily, hopefully. Yeah. And that's of course connected to the IDE hard disk and to our LED. This has UMC chips on there, and you can see some battery corrosion here, some crystallization. Also has a COM port. These are COM ports, it seems. Interesting. So this is a hard disk and floppy disk and COM port expansion. 16-bit ISA, it seems. So this is the 8-bit ISA, and the other bits are here. Looks a bit worn out and battery damaged, but we're going to hopefully be able to fix it. If we're not able to fix this, it's not a huge loss. So you can still get these relatively easily online used. Yeah, kind of the main attraction, considering expansion cards, is the PC bridge board here. Yeah, it's coming very slowly. There we go. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. There's some corrosion on the Western Digital chip there. Yeah, this indeed looks like a 386 bridge board. It says A2386SX bridge board. So this is an Intel 386SX PC on a card, basically, that you can access through your Amiga workbench, which is super nice, of course. And of course it has a VARTA that is for the battery buffered clock on this board, I think, and for the BIOS stuff, I guess, in these older PCs. Yeah, looks to be in pretty good condition. There's some corrosion on this Western Digital interface chip, which I believe is the floppy disk drive interface and the hard disk interface that's on here, probably. This card alone is super rare, I guess. 1991 Commodore Business Machines. Maybe this was bought together with the system. We don't know. Maybe this was added later. And the last card on the bottom here is a graphics card, I think. PC graphics card, VGA card. That's only connected to the ISA slots as well. Let's see if we can remove that without damaging anything. Yep, that's a Trident. So this appears to be a Trident TVGA8900C, also from 1991, according to this chip. A pretty standard VGA card. It has a VGA connector and some internal connector, ISA 16-bit. And now this is our expansion section of the Amiga board, basically. Commodore A3000T revision 6.1. These are our Zorro slots, as I said, and these are our PC slots, so ISA slots, ISA 16-bit ISA slots. 4 ISA slots, which is pretty handy. 2 are only ISA slots, no Zorro part. 2 are for bridge boards, where you have connections to both Zorro and ISA. And then there's 3 Zorro slots, dedicated Zorro slots, and 1 graphics slot, I believe. And there's also a processor slot for the processor expansion cards. Okay, so far so good. We are going to have to remove this whole center bezel here where the hard disk sits in order to get the mainboard out, I think. There's also a speaker in here. I think that's standard on the A3000T. And you could actually have the Amiga sound output through the speaker, I believe, even. Which doesn't make sense because, yeah, unless you just wanted to use for graphics work, the Amigas deserve better speakers to be connected. This is just a little, very tiny speaker that's in here. Yeah, let's remove this bezel. I think there's just screws here and on the back side. You should be able to take this whole thing out, hopefully. There's 4 screws from this side and I think 4 screws from the other side probably. And we should be able to take the whole bezel thing out. It's not too service unfriendly so far. So and then we have these 4 screws here. These are also painted in the case color because they are visible. At least if you look at the back side of the computer all the time. Yep, that sounded like something is loose. Yep, it's loose. Let's see, we have to disconnect the hard disk drive. This is a SCSI hard disk, of course. Just going to mark the connector that was connected to the hard disk. So we can connect it the same way again. It has rounded corners on this backside, so it's meant to be pulled out like this, I guess. Yep, also have to disconnect the power from the hard disk. And we have to disconnect the power from the floppy disk drive here. Okay. So this is a Quantum ProDrive LPS. It's a SCSI hard disk. These are known to fail quite frequently, but we're going to see. So we're going to have to remove the drives as well, I think, to properly get to the mainboard. And yeah, just to remove this cable. This is a single floppy disk cable. Another floppy disk cable. This is our SCSI cable directly connected to the mainboard. And this is the massive mainboard. Ooh, this is huge. Yeah, this is all mainboard. This is how large that is. Yeah, we're going to have to take the disk drive out and also the extra PC hard disk here to get this out properly, I think. There's our small speaker and there's our fan in there. So let's remove the disk drive and the hard disk. And for that, we're going to have to remove the other side panel because they are screwed in from both sides. It should be the same as on the other side. There we go. It's kind of clipped in on the top. So we have to remove the bottom first. That works best, it seems. The back side is very impressive. There's absolutely nothing to see here. But there's a cutout to get to the screw there. It's pretty nice that they have a cutout in exactly the right spot to screw in the 3.5-inch drive, whatever you put in there. Power supply seems to be screwed in from the top, I guess, interestingly. So that's what we need to remove the top bezel here for. Is this holding both drives in? Maybe. Yeah, that's kind of a locking mechanism. On both sides there are these little clips that I think hold the drives in place. Just wish it was easier to get to the one on the other side. There we are. Yep, that's pretty cool. So these drives sit on these little plastic rods here. And they have a slot that fits this little part here that gets inserted here and screwed down. So these can't move after inserting that. And now these do actually move. They actually should slide out to the front. Okay, got the disk drive out. This one doesn't want to cooperate, but it's a PC drive in an Amiga. What do you expect? Yep, this comes out Nice, that wasn't too bad. That's another Quantum ProDrive LPS, but that's the IDE interface version with the little front panel that was quite common at the time. So you could put it in your disk drive slots, basically. It doesn't say how large it is, I think, but yeah, pretty old school. 1988. The disk drive is a Chinon FB357A, which I believe is a high density drive, if I'm not mistaken, in the A3000. So this might be my first Amiga that has a high density disk drive even. So now we should be able to get the whole mainboard out. I think we have to remove the power supply plug here, and there's some smaller plugs that I'm going to take pictures of on top here for the front panel, I believe, and down here for the speaker and the fan. Okay. Battery damage doesn't look too severe. We're probably going to be able to patch that up. I think some traces might be damaged. We're going to see when I get this out. Okay, this is keyed. That's good. And then there are several screws on this mainboard, and the screws in the back here for the connectors, which are screwed through the case. There's a loose screw in here as well. That's not good. Hello. So I'm probably going to remove the connectors in the back first. These are all screwed down through the case, I think. And these are just hex screws, just like on other Amigas. But they are quite a bit longer on this one. So the serial port is not connected to the board. It's not soldered to the board, it's connected through a connector and a cable. And the other ports are connected to the board directly, it seems. And they have the longer screws. Of course, this is the first time I've ever worked on one of these. And probably the last time. I am going to work on this one. But chances to ever see another one of these in my lab here are pretty slim, I guess. And that's the last one. Does this have a bend here? It seems so. Ew. That's not good. So maybe we have to bend the case part in shape there a bit. I don't know if this happened during shipping, probably. This seems to be warped. Although it is super solid, really. And I don't think the mainboard was affected in any way. Yeah, as I said, several screws here. Maybe start on the bottom side here. Yeah, these are also proper long screws here. Nice. Okay, I see. The one that we found in the case is one from one of these, I think. So this serial port is screwed in through the casing with nuts and these standoff screws, and then connected to the mainboard through this connector here. Yep. Now this should be absolutely free. Yeah, we can just flip it, open it like a book, basically. Wow, this is a massive board. There we go. Yay. Wow, okay. It's heavy too. This is the Amiga 3000T board. It is massive, of course. And as you can see, there has been some battery leakage. This chip got a bit caked in. Oh, that's our FPU, our coprocessor. This is the main processor, actually. And on some of the boards that they shipped with the 68040 expansion card on here, this was not populated as far as I read. which is pretty interesting. On some of the initial ones, they had both processors in there actually, because they couldn't be bothered to take these off or leave them off of the boards they already produced, probably. Typical Commodore stuff. Yeah, but otherwise, these are our CIV RAMs. They have kind of zigzag pin configuration on the bottom. I'm not going to take these out because they are very painful to straighten the pins on and very inconvenient to insert and get out of these slots. What I am going to do is to remove the battery and take a closer look at this area here. Maybe I'm going to have to remove some other components, but other than that, this looks pristine pretty much. Shiny as well. Seems there's some shiny lacquer on here. Seems our battery corrosion is very much limited to this little area here. And that should be totally fixable. If the other stuff works, this probably is going to become a working Amiga again. And even this 68882, 25 megahertz, is not unobtainium. So these are really commonly available still. Interestingly, I think the clock chip is this Ricoh chip here that's socketed as well. I'm going to try to desolder the battery to cleanly remove that and then put some vinegar on the board and remove that afterwards. And hopefully there's no trace damage. But as this was displaying a yellow screen, it's likely that there is at least some damage somewhere. We're going to see. So I think what I'm going to do is to put on some gloves, because these are NiCad, nickel cadmium. And nickel is not very poisonous, but cadmium is, so don't want to contaminate myself too much. And of course you don't want to dispose of these batteries in your household trash. It's not even a Varta in this one, it's a GP brand. And there is some corrosion on the back of the board, unfortunately. I can see that. This is where our battery is. And yeah, of course, some battery juice has seeped through the vias there. I think I'm going to clean this up a bit. Some IPA. And possibly there's broken traces here. It doesn't look too good on the backside, but nothing major, thankfully. These are our contacts. This one and these two, I think. Possibly going to add a bit of fresh solder to that to make it easier. Because usually if you have battery corrosion, it's not so easy to desolder, because the corrosion kind of damages the surface of the solder. And it doesn't take heat anymore. Like in this case. Yeah. This is going to be fun. Oh, there we go. Usually you can solder through that at some point. But sometimes it's just too much. So I'm going to pull on the battery while heating the pins up here. And hopefully I'm going to be able to remove it. Yeah, there it comes. Okay, one side of the battery just ripped out. There we go. That wasn't too bad. So this is the battery. Interestingly, leaked on one side, mostly. That's the negative side. I think that's what typically happens. Yeah, that came out rather cleanly. Didn't damage any of the other contacts, but you can now see that there's corrosion on this chip, which is a 74LS174. There's some corrosion on this coprocessor here that we can hopefully remove, and also on the traces directly under the battery here. There's a lot of traces going through there, under the battery even, which is kind of risky, I guess, design-wise. But yeah, this could have been much, much worse. These batteries sometimes destroy the whole area here. Just going to take some solder wick and try to remove the solder. Because of course that is contaminated too with battery juice. Yeah, there's something coming. So yeah, here is the problem. Basically, this, you see the dull solder there, and that's what happens if these oxidize too much. It doesn't take any heat from my soldering iron, basically. I'm still going to add some fresh solder from this side, and maybe eventually we can get that off. But yeah, there's a lot of corrosion happening there. That's not great. Look, it doesn't take any solder there. Just one stick. So we're going to have to do some cleanup there before we can get that out, if at all. I think I want to remove the PC card battery as well at this point before we do anything else, because I'm already wearing gloves. Yeah, basically the same thing here. Leaked on the negative side. It's a GP brand, not a Varta. So yeah, Varta is more of a scapegoat kind of thing, I guess. These NiCad batteries all leak over time, especially if they're not used. So we're going to do the exact same thing here. Just going to add some fresh solder to all of the connections here, if I can. Just pulling on it slightly while heating it up. Okay, the positive side is easier as with the other one. Let's see if we can get the negative side to come out. If we maybe have to clip that. No, it came out. Okay. So that's this one. Doesn't look as bad as the other one from the battery side of things, but the corrosion is worse, I think, on this board. So this is what this looks like. Not so much to see, but it looks pretty dirty from the top here. So there was leakage and some dust stuck to the leakage, I think. Yeah, this also goes into the recycling bin. And our board doesn't look super bad. This one capacitor here looks green, that's corroded. But yeah, the chip has some green legs there that might have eaten into the chip, but I guess this is not unreplaceable in case it is broken. And also it seems to be the disk drive controller, so maybe we are covered with our other card there. There was also some corrosion on that interface card, I think, but yeah, maybe we're going to be able to resolve that with an external card in case this doesn't work anymore. Otherwise, the board looks pretty good, actually. And hopefully, it still mostly works. Yeah, we're going to have to do some major cleanup. That's very important, that you neutralize the battery leakage, which is basic. So you can use acid to neutralize it, and that's going to be the next step. I like to use white vinegar. Just put it on there with a Q-tip or a cotton bud and let it soak in and neutralize the corrosion, and then really, really thoroughly clean off the whole area with water and alcohol. And usually that does the trick, at least from a cleaning standpoint. And then we are going to have to fix some traces probably, and maybe replace some components. That's going to be fun. But that's for the next video in this series, which should be available in a week or 10 days. So stay tuned for more. I think this was long enough already, and I am going to go slow and super careful with this thing because I don't want to break it any more than it is already broken. So I hope you enjoyed this, hope you stay tuned for the other episodes that are coming soon, and I hope I can revive this in some way at some point. We'll see. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Special thanks, as always, to everybody who supports me on Patreon or on Ko-fi or on the YouTube channel memberships page or elsewhere. The links are on my website or in the video description in case you want to give me some support, which is, of course, highly appreciated. Without you, this stuff would not be happening. Another special shout out to the person who donated this stuff to me. I am so happy And I hope I can do this justice and make it work again. Thank you so much for trusting me with this. Yeah, that's it for today. I'm Jan Beta. Thanks for watching. See you next time with some battery leakage repair and corrosion removal. Bye.